Ready.
Okay, we ready, David?
Yep.
This is the Monday, April 4th, 2022 meeting of the City of Palm Springs Architectural Review Committee. Mr. Newell, will you please do roll call?
Yes, member Thompson is excused. Member Walsh.
Here.
Member Payline.
Here.
Member McCoy.
Here.
Member Lockyer.
Hello, here.
Member Dozy.
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman.
Here.
And Chair Jakeway.
Here.
Quorum.
Okay, thank you. May we have a report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Chair Jakeway and committee members, our agenda was posted on Wednesday, March 30th. Our meeting has been posted in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? Appears not. Could we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Moved by Sean,
Second.
second by John McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that is within this committee's purview. The item, if the item is on today's agenda, we'll speak about that when that item is called. Is there anybody in the waiting room or anybody who would like to make some comments to the committee that are not related to today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I think we can move ahead to the minutes of the March 21st meeting. Does anybody have any revisions or corrections to the minutes of that meeting?
A minor spelling under number 4, it misspelled huck lighting. It should be puck lighting, P as in Paul.
Okay. Anything else? Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, Sean.
Second.
Second by John McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, we're going to move along to new business. Item number 2, Mindy Reed for a land use permit and waiver to continue the use of an enlarged parklet located at 140 South Palm Canyon Drive. So we have a staff report, please.
Yes, Chair Jakeway and committee members. So let me share my screen. So the matter before you is a land use permit request seeking a waiver to the design parklet design guidelines for a 393 square foot parklet. The parklet will be in front of Revel, which is located at 140 South Palm Canyon Drive. The reason the waiver is required because the parklet itself does extend beyond the storefront of the restaurant that it is serving. It extends slightly south and north of that lineal frontage of that business. So what you see here is the site plan of the restaurant here on the left, the sidewalk in the middle, and then the parklet on the right. So you can see it extends out into what is normally a parking area or a parallel parking space along the street. As I said, this is a waiver to extend beyond the storefront on the north and south sides of the business. They are proposing a 43-inch high decorative metal railing that would be built if this LUP is approved. They have gotten approval from the property owner as well as the adjacent tenants, business tenants of the restaurant. They also do have seating in front, directly in front of the business that would remain. So the design that they are proposing is shown here on the screen. As you can see that there will be a rust brown metal screen that would serve as the barrier on the perimeter of the parklet space. They are proposing the umbrellas that you see here on the screen And light fixtures that are proposed include both the festoon lighting as well as the proposed fixtures that you see on the posts. After this was published, that told the applicant we had requested that the parklet not extend beyond the 8 feet, which you see here. So they've revised the plans to include all of this parklet space within that 8-foot area. And so that's what you see here on this screen. They've taken fixtures out as well as the projecting beam that would extend past that 8-foot limit into the traffic lane here. So this is the revised exhibit, which you don't have as a part of your packet, but I did want to show it to you because the applicant has revised it to address that requirement. So it does change a little bit of what you see along the street. The fixtures are on the inside of the post as opposed to the outside. Staff is recommending approval of this application subject to some conditions that you see here on the screen, that the metal planters be removed, that the K-rails also be removed with the exception of the K-rail on the north side of the parklet for safety. However, it should be installed within the parklet area and screened from public view behind the proposed barrier. Remove all of the signs except one to comply with the city's sign ordinance. And finally, reduce the width of the parklet to 8 feet, which, as you see, they've already demonstrated by the revised exhibit that they've provided. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I am happy to answer questions that the community might have. And I believe the applicant is also with us tonight.
Thank you, David. Does the committee have any questions for staff?
We do, Tom.
Yeah, Robert.
David, does their proposed parklet extend all the way to the bulb out in front of this old C space, all the way to the south?
I believe it does. Let me see. I can pull that up here. I mean, that's an angled, 45-degree angle bulb out. So given the design of it, it doesn't extend all the way to the edge of the angle, but essentially it would extend to where the cars line up directly in front of that adjacent business.
So there isn't a parking space between the parklet and the bulb out?
Correct. There would not
Okay,
be.
thank you.
John Walsh.
Chairman. David, the lanterns that are shown in the last presentation plate there, those are new, correct?
Correct. Those would be installed as a part of the new structure.
And did they give us any information in terms of the specifications of those?
We do not have a specification sheet for that, no.
Okay, thank you.
David, looking at those elevations, there's something that's kind of either orange or red halfway between the railing and the light fixtures. Do we know what that is?
Let's see. This is, I'm talking about these, let me pull it up. These here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe those are reflective tape, but I'm not sure, maybe the applicant can clarify.
Sure, okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, is the applicant here? I don't see her name on the list.
Maybe she did not attend tonight. So I don't know if there's another representative from the restaurant on the call, but if there is, please identify yourself. Guess she wasn't able to join us this evening.
I'm unsure how to proceed because I think I know I have a number of questions for the applicant and I'm sure other members do too. Should we just continue this?
Maybe we should move on to the next item, and then if I can get in touch with the applicant before the
Perfect.
end of the meeting, we might come bring it back forward.
Okay, then let's table this item for now and move on to item number 3 under new business. Dirk McCulloch of Jackson, Maine Architecture on behalf of NWB Palm Springs LLC for major architectural application to construct a 61,704 square foot self-storage facility with a 912 square foot leasing office on a 3.55 acre undeveloped parcel located at 890 North Genotry Trail. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Let me share my screen. All right. As introduced, this is a proposed self-storage facility, and the project site is located on the North Genotry Trail next to the Desert Sun building. The project site is 3.55 acres in size. The general plan designation is industrial, and the property is zoned planned research and development park. The property, in addition to the Desert Sun building on the south side, the property abuts to the Escena community on the north and east sides. And this is a picture of the project site. It's taken at the corner of the North Genotry Trail and the private driveway that leads to the Desert Sun property. There's an existing 8-foot high wall that separates the project site from the Escena community on the both sides, on the north and the east sides, more specifically. And the applicant is proposing to construct the self-storage facility that's 61,704 square feet in the area. The proposed building height is a single story with a maximum building height of 20 feet. And the business will provide indoor and outdoor storage areas. As I mentioned, the property is adjacent to the existing 8-foot high walls. And this is a proposed site design. The property is not actually a corner lot, even though it appears to be a corner lot. The site is adjacent to a Desert Sun property, and there's a recorded non-exclusive easement that allows access to the project site. The building is shifted and located towards the south west corner of the project site, giving quite a bit of buffer on the north and the east sides from the residential property. And as I mentioned, the customer service, the parking spaces for RV, and then also the parking area increase parking spaces for the customers. And the site is accessible from the south side, and the vehicle is going to be going around the building. So this is just to show the location of the non-exclusive easement, which allows access to the project site. This is just a floor plan submitted by the applicant. The self-storage facility is going to have interior storage areas, and then also storage units that are accessible from the outside. And this is a roof plan. The applicant is proposing a canopy on the north side of the building for the loading space, as well as a customer parking. The business is proposing the installation of solar panels and top equipment, which will be screened. And these are the elevations of the proposed building. The applicant is proposing the use of CMUs, metal, the stucco for the exterior. There's a metal coping that's being proposed. The proposed color is a desert neutral in terms of palette, as you see, and these are additional elevations that are proposed by the applicant. They are proposing to use the blue as an accent color for the building, and particularly for the doors for the storage units. And these are the renderings submitted by the applicant. The highest point of the building is measured at the corner of the building, and that's 20 feet in height. And the applicant also submitted a proposed sign plan in conjunction with this application. However, the official application for signage has not been submitted as of today. And additional the renderings of the proposed building. And this project was actually reviewed by the Planning Commission on March 9th for the project's major development permit application. And the Planning Commission approved the application subject to conditions of approval. And one of the conditions is that is a project to provide a screening, more specifically the Masonry Wall in the entry points. And the applicant is actually submitted two design options for the ARC for review. One of them, as you can see at the left bottom corner, one of them is the Masonry Wall as required by the condition by the Planning Commission, but they are also requesting the consideration of this alternative screening, and the applicant is explaining the reason for submitting the two design options in the attachment. And these are the proposed the color and material samples for the exterior of the building. And in addition to it, this is a proposed landscape plan. When this project was reviewed by the Planning Commission, there were some public comments concerning the adequate screening of the RVs that are parked in the exterior, the outdoor parking lot. And the Planning Commission imposed the conditions of approval, which requires applicant to install additional planting materials for better screening. And this is just to show the comparison of what was reviewed by the Planning Commission on March 9th and what's shown on the revised plan. This is the treatment of the north side of the project site. And staff did not find any difference here. As for the east side, applicant is proposing a few additional trees for screening. Excuse me. And as you see here, the landscape plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission does not really show any bioswale or anything, but the April 4th architecture review rendering shows a bioswale that goes around the project site. This is based on, in response to the comments that was provided by the Planning Commission at the meeting. The Planning Commission was concerned that the decomposed granite may be easily blown away by wind. So applicant made a few changes in that aspect. And this is a treatment wall that I briefly mentioned earlier. The applicant has submitted two design options for ARC review tonight. And this is a comparison of the overall landscape design, what was reviewed by the Planning Commission on March 9th and what's being proposed tonight for ARC review. And based on the submitted information, as I mentioned, this project has been approved by the Planning Commission subject to conditions of approval. And the proposed use is consistent with the general plan and zoning. And the project generally meets the required architecture review criteria and finding. And also just to ensure that the project fully conforms to the zoning requirement, the staff is recommending the conditions of approval that relates to the conformance to the city's water efficient landscape ordinance and sign ordinance regulations. In addition to those conditions, staff is also recommending a condition of approval which requires installation of additional trees for a better screening. And again, implementing these conditions will not really alter the nature of the project. And that said, the staff is recommending that the ARC approve the proposed project subject to the conditions of approval that are included in Exhibit A, which include increase the quantity of trees along the north and east property lines to better incorporate the conditions of approval imposed by the Planning Commission, and then also the comments provided by the public. And this concludes the staff presentation, and staff and applicants are both available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. First off, let's see from the committee, any questions for staff? Robert.
Yeah, couple of questions. First of all, are there no shading requirements for the RV storage? We have it for parking for the building, but where there's nothing in the code that requires shading for all that parking?
Yes, that is correct. So the proposed design increased the shading for the customer parking area. However, the RV storage area was just considered the storage spaces rather than the parking, where the standard conditions are typically applied in terms of a shading requirement. But
But
the
that seems really odd to me, that it's excluded. But the other question is, the planning commission wanted to add some CMU wall. Is that primarily along the south property line?
let me go back to.
I wasn't clear exactly.
I think those, I think, Robert, those are the walls adjacent to the rolling gates.
Yes,
So,
that is correct.
so then all those garage doors along that driveway on the south would be exposed. Is that right?
So right now, let me see. Yes, so
Yes.
can you see the cursor?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes, so the area where the wall is proposed is this location right here by the gate. And then
Okay,
on the Gene Archery side, which is right over here near the turnaround area,
I see.
two sections.
So planning commission didn't have any comments about additional screening along the south property line.
Correct.
Okay,
Sorry, Noriko, I'm sorry, Robert. Noriko, where on the west is the wall?
You mean where the applicant is required to install a wall?
Yeah, that's right.
Right, because it's right here. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, sorry, do I have my bearings off? Isn't that the east?
This is,
that
I'm
is-
sorry, you're talking about the west side?
Yeah,
It's over here,
I see.
turnaround area.
Okay, dope. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Robert.
no, that's okay. And then the last question, just again for clarification, planning commission was talking about increasing landscaping in a triangular area near the entrance. And my assumption is that is where they're proposing the bioswale. Is that right?
Yes, do you see, no,
Oh, it's back there.
right here. So as previously proposed, this area was to be paved. So instead of using a hardscape, the staff recommended the conditions of approval that the additional, well, this area to be basically converting to landscape area is what it is.
Got it.
That's how it was approved.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much.
Noriko, I noticed from the east property line, there's a 100-foot setback. My understanding is you can't have anything in the setback that's taller than 6 feet. So if they're going to be putting these RVs in the setback, does that not comply with the purpose of a setback?
Go back to the code requirement. I know that, because this is a commercial property, and let me just check.
But it's abutting a residential zone, correct?
Correct. Let me check something. I believe the area can be utilized for parking or storage.
Well, see, I think parking is fine and storage may be up to 6 feet high, but when you're putting these big, tall motorhomes that are going to be higher than the wall, I just question, is that an appropriate use within the setback?
Okay, let me take a look at the code requirement very quickly here.
Just from practicality, I think when we look at our zoning code, we look at how the building setback is relative to the property line. And so I think that's what we were applying here. The commission didn't express a concern with this project in terms of its site layout. So generally, I think the site plan, the way it's presented, was approved by the Planning Commission. So there isn't really any major issues that were brought up by the commission relative to that setback and the RV locations, other than the screening.
Right, okay, thank you. Any other?
Robert, yeah.
Sean,
I do. So just a couple of quick questions, Noriko, and maybe you explain this, but can I just run it by you one more time? So why did this project bypass ARC first and go right to planning committee? Doesn't it seem backwards?
The city amended the architectural review procedures. So a development such as this one goes to planning commission first for a major development permit application. And after obtaining approval, the project goes to architecture review committee for a major architectural review application. So it used to be, yes, the ARC used to review such project first and then go to the planning commission, but the procedure has been changed.
So, but then to David's point, like, is the planning commission truly approving the site plan, or is that up for review now? Because I feel like a lot of the questions we have are going to relate to the site plan. And it feels like, wait a second, this is what we normally do and review, and that's about to be a wave of that come in related to this project.
The planning commission did approve the site plan.
Should we care about that or not and just continue on with our comments, or do we need to stay quiet on that topic? Question mark. David?
Yeah, I would just add that there is new criteria, new findings that I would direct your attention to on page 2 and 3 and 4 of your staff report. So in that last table on the bottom of page 2, we talk about really the architecture of the project. The site plan is laid out and approved by the Planning Commission under the new entitlement review process. So the development permit is approved now under the new entitlement process. And that really consists of the site layout, the building size, the building location, the uses, consistency with the general plan and zoning. And then now when it comes to ARC under the new entitlement process, the committee is looking at those criteria on pages 2 through 4, where it talks about color, materials, solar shading, landscaping, etc.
But then it's going to be hard to ignore that, David. Just talk this through for a minute when we're talking about things on the site that actually we may be striving to screen this building from public view. And they're going to be structures or built structures within the site, walls, things like that, heights of walls, and additional landscape features, and potentially even the building facade itself, which can't quite tell that everything that's going on this with the elevations provided, but I guess I'm just saying it's going to be hard to keep quiet about some of the site stuff as it relates to the architecture and the screening of the architecture from the street.
I think those are certainly within the committee's purview. You can talk about screening, you can talk about design of the building, you can talk about how you screen areas of the project.
Okay.
So yeah, that is within your purview.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
any other questions of staff? If not, the applicant could present himself. Give us your name, please. You have 10 minutes to present your project.
Hi, yes, I'm Dirk McCullough with Jackson Maine Architecture. And I'm joined, if questions come up for any of my design team colleagues, I've got Colleen Nolan is the landscape architect. One of my colleagues, Margot Turek, is on the phone or on the call as well. Jim Fitzpatrick, who's the owner's rep with West Coast Self Storage, and Michael Avidian, who's with Lars Anderson, the civil engineer on the project. So we're all here to answer any questions. I don't want to, want to be mindful of time and not regurgitate, what Noriko already presented. The couple bits that I would like to highlight, just a couple topics that I would like to highlight that relate to some of the discussion as it pertains to trees. And I think I know this is in the staff report. We're trying to find the balance here between, because we hear and see the feedback about wanting additional screening with trees that kind of line this masonry wall. We're trying to find a balance. This project also falls under the review jurisdiction, I guess, if you will, of the Airport Land Use Commission. And so we've run through a review process with them. They have some very specific landscaping guidelines and requirements in many regions or in many sectors of the project, but not least of which is trees, and a pretty specific guideline and prohibition against kind of creating continual tree canopy. They don't want us to have trees so close together that it creates habitat for birds because of the danger of bird strikes to aircraft at the airport. So we're trying to find that balance, right? With the landscaping plan that you guys have in front of you. Part of the revision that we did to, between what we presented initially with the Planning Commission and what's in front of you all now is took that bio infiltration swale, made it a little bit more serpentine in an effort to, and we're limited in the space we can do that, but in an effort to create some varying depth as it relates to the property line of trees, and in small increments where possible, kind of get those trees a little bit more close together. But again, we're bumping up against the Airport Land Use Commission kind of prohibition, if you will, on creating continuous tree canopy. So that's one thing I wanted to share and just kind of put on the table for discussion. Let's see here. I guess Noriko already spoke about the wall versus fencing, and the masonry wall. Kind of some of our concerns about the masonry wall are a solid wall like that is highly subject to wind forces, and then you need larger footings and all that kind of stuff. Also, just the thermal mass was a concern. A heavy masonry wall like that will absorb heat all day long and radiate that throughout the season, throughout the hot climate time. So we propose this alternate of a fence and some sort of side obscuring fence that would have slats, side obscuring slats. Not like, I'm not talking vinyl slats in chain link, but a more architectural fence to effectively screen the site, but allow wind and air to pass and have less thermal mass to it. See, as it applies to the decomposed granite, or relates to the decomposed granite comment, that was a comment that came up kind of right at the end of the Planning Commission meeting. There wasn't really any opportunity to discuss it with them at that time. So the ways in which we responded to that was, again, taking this bioretention or bioinfiltration swale and lining it with riprap, which significantly reduces the amount of decomposed granite. And then even primarily along the multi-use trail that's along North Genotry Trail, introduced some larger landscape stones to kind of help stabilize and break up some of those areas of decomposed granite. I guess backing up a step and talking on the heels of the comment that was made at the Planning Commission about the decomposed granite with our landscape architect. And Colleen, feel free to chime in here if I don't get this right, but we really do feel like that's the most kind of appropriate ground cover out there. And it's used in a lot of other areas in that, or a lot of other developments in that area. And so we do feel like it's the best solution. But we wanted to be responsive to the Planning Commission's comment. And so these are some of the measures we've taken to kind of reduce the overall area of the decomposed granite, and then introducing some of these larger kind of landscape stones and boulders, for lack of a better term, not quite that large, to kind of stabilize and kind of create a little bit of a border. It wouldn't be a continuous border, but a little bit of a border along the multi-user trail along North Genotry. Last thing on my mind is, and it kind of got buried in there, and again, we didn't have an opportunity at the Planning Commission to discuss it, but there's a condition PLN 5, and I had the page open here a moment ago. On page, it's PDF page 57 of the staff report. It's a prohibition or a comment about no exterior downspouts. And I wanted to kind of raise that topic. These self-storage buildings, and this particular one, on the north and south facades, the way the roofs are done and constructed, and kind of the convention for these, the structural structural convention for these buildings is we do go to typically go to an even gutter, which would, from that gutter, you would have exterior downspouts. I will grant I'm from the Northwest, so a much wetter climate than maybe you guys are used to. But I have all sorts of qualms about taking roof water out from that's outside the building and then bringing it back inside of the building when I don't have to. And so I guess would ask for consideration. And when we do these downspouts, these exterior downspouts on these buildings, we there's a detail we have for a pretty heavy gauge steel kind of downspout protector. I mean, that's what we call it. It's just a bent steel downspout protector, which keeps them really neat and orderly, keeps them from getting impacted by vehicles and dented or bent up. But what it does is it keeps them out of people's storage units where they're actually more subject to damage from people moving around furniture and mattresses and whatnot. And if service or maintenance is needed on them, we don't have to have folks vacate their units or get access to their units, which there's time lag in doing that. So I guess we're asking for consideration on that item. Those do only occur at the south and north facades, not on the primary facade, which is facing North Geometry Trail. And even on the north facade, many of them will be kind of within or underneath that covered parking and loading, unloading bay area. So they're kind of well within the bounds, if you will, of the building. Those are the main items I wanted to bring up, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I have a question, Dirk.
Yeah.
What the covered parking on the north side, why is the roof so high above the ground?
Well, oftentimes we're going to have, some people driving U-Hauls or loading type, moving type trucks, small box trucks. And so we wanted to create clearance for that. That's the primary driver.
So it looks like it's about 15 feet tall to the bottom of the structure, if I'm reading the elevations correct. Is it needed for the entire length of that structure? It just seems so out of scale and proportion to the rest of the building.
Yeah, the concern is, when we do these covered loading and unloading areas is, if you start to step them up, you might have a height indicator or a height warning at one area, but somebody driving a U-Haul or, similar type box truck kind of sees it at one or doesn't notice it in another area and goes in and damages either their vehicle or of course the structure. When we're doing these kinds of facilities, I always imagine college student on the last day of the month, they got to get moved out. They're tired. They've been moving for 3 or 4 days. They're driving an unfamiliar vehicle that has height that they're not familiar with. And so we tend to err on the side of caution when giving a little bit more clearance. So.
Okay, and could you explain to me the south elevation where you've got the units that are accessed directly from the driveway? Is there parking that people can use while they're taking things from their vehicle, putting it into those storage units? And it appears to me on the site plan of A1.1 that might be a fire lane along there. So I don't know that they could park. And then is there any screening between those garage doors and Tamarisk Road?
So there is no parking along that side. The parking, for that end of the building would be down at kind of the southeast portion. There's 4 parking spaces down there. So that would be the parking that serves that section of the building. Because you're correct, that is a fire lane that runs up that south side of the building. And the screening on that side, and we early on in the process, we'd had some discussion over this with planning department and whatnot. But on our side of the property line, if you will, there's a 5-foot, it varies, but more or less a 5-foot or at least a 5-foot landscape buffer. And then there's an existing 5+ foot landscape buffer on the Desert Sun side of the property line, the offside, south side of the property line. So you have a total of 10+ feet of landscaping. There's a pretty well-established hedge on the Desert Sun side right now that runs really the length of that. And then we would augment that with landscaping on our side.
Thank you. Any other committee members have questions of the applicant?
Yes, with the overhangs that Chair Doty was referring to, is there any lighting mounted underneath them?
Yes, there are canopy lights mounted underneath there. Yes.
Okay, we don't have any specifications on that. What type of lighting?
Oh, I had the cut sheet. I don't know if I have the cut sheet open. It's an LED, kind of parking garage type fixture. What's that?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, like a standard, or I shouldn't say standard, but a parking garage type LED fixture. Downlight.
Okay. And okay, that's it.
I'm going to get back to that structure we were just talking about. It's called out as a metal seam roof. Is it pitched? Is it sloped, or is it flat? It looks flat in the elevations.
It's quite flat, but it does have a pitch to it. It is a standing seam metal roof. I think, oh gosh, and maybe Margot, you can chime in. I think it's a 1/2 inch per foot slope. I don't know that I've got that on our elevations.
And then your plan on A 2.2, it calls out 3 different sunshades along the center portion of the building, but I believe those have been eliminated from it. Is that correct? But they're not showing
you are.
any conditions.
Yeah, you are correct. I apologize. We revised those elevations based on some comments during the planning commission meeting and took those out, but I did not revise my roof plan. So the sunshades at the corners, the kind of L-shaped and inverted L-shaped sunshades are still in the project. The 3 intermediate ones, kind of midpoint of that facade, are no longer in the project. And that standing seam metal roof is at a 112 pitch. I found it in my drawings here.
Is there a detail for that in here somewhere? Section?
For which one?
What you're talking about, the exterior roof overhangs?
Are you talking about the canopy that we're talking about, or the sunshades?
The canopy. Well, actually both.
We don't have a detail of the canopy at this point, though you can see them in kind of rendering view in some of the renderings in various views there. There's a section through the building, kind of a rendered section. I'm trying to get to it here. I can tell you which page. On A 3.10, that at the right side, which is the north end of that building, section A that runs across the top of that sheet, that depicts that the loading canopy. And you can see the slope where it's sloping, from the high side at the south edge of that canopy to the low side at the north.
Gotcha.
I have some questions.
Robert.
So it looks like from the elevations, if I'm looking at it correctly, that on the north or south side, you're looking at potentially 3 downspouts. And I'm looking at your elevation 1 Tamarisk Road. And well, I'm sorry, that's only half of it. So it looks like they occur every like 4 bays.
Yeah, roughly about every 40 feet on center.
All right. And then are those wall packs on those same elevations?
Correct, yes.
And so talking about the exterior lighting, what are those LED or is that something else?
They are LED.
And what kind of color temperature are you looking at?
Oof. Let me see if I've got that cut sheet handy here. Bear with me 1 second. They are a cutoff fixture, full cutoff fixture per the code. That's not the right one. I got a couple of different cut sheets I gotta get open here. Bear with me. 4,500K.
Ooh.
Oof is right. So that would be consistent for all your exterior lighting.
For that, I'd have to look at some of the other ones. You know, some of the down lights in the canopy, we have options between 3K to 5K. I'd have to look at each of the cut sheets.
We need to see those. Sorry, Robert.
No, go ahead. You're the pattern we're having.
Yeah, just like the cut sheets. I don't know if you've gone back and looked at any of the former ARC presentations, but that's like always a hot ticket item here. So a little surprised that some of these things you're describing as like, yeah, you know, your basic outdoor lighting fixture underneath the canopy, when it's like people are going to ask how many lumens there are, what the color temperature is, and there's a general theme. If you kind of review any of the ARC comments or prior meetings, that I think you could see this definitely going to be a hot ticket item here. It's got a question. Were you going to add more, Robert, or can I jump in here?
Go ahead. I'll interrupt you next time.
Yeah, this might be a half staff question, but photometric study, is that
There is one.
something I see on the final page here, but what is that even referencing if there are no specs for these lights?
There is so I'm not sure if we're looking at the same thing. Is there an EP 301 sheet in your
There
guys'
is.
package?
There is.
So there's specifications or specifications, manufacturer and model for the lights, lumens. I don't know that they call out the color temperature there. So some of those things are listed.
But and then I'm gonna ask, like, I don't see, you mentioned some downlights from those loading canopies. Is that loading canopy, is that north, east, and south?
Just on the north side is the loading canopy.
And which fixture are those that are the downlights from those canopies?
That's fixture F03. It's a Cree lighting edge series, 8,600 and 8,700 lumens.
And that the slope of that roof is kind of up towards the building, down towards the north. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And those fixtures are about midway between the face of the building, if you will, and the outer eave. So they'll be back up underneath that canopy a little bit.
John Walsh, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes, Mr. McClay, I might be confused by the graphic, but whether it's L11 or A110, on the east side, there's the row of storage units that are accessed from that, from the drive, but I'm seeing parallel parking in front of those units. How's that work?
It's very common for these kinds of facilities. The frequency with which a particular tenant might be at their space, there's just really little or no occasion for coincidence there, where somebody's like, oh, and if there is, it's really easy for somebody to slide their car up a bay or down a bay if somebody says, hey, you're in front of my unit. But these folks have been owning and operating these kinds of facilities for a really long time, and so they've got good data to show that there's not a conflict in doing that.
Okay.
I still,
Robert,
yeah. So could you talk to me a little bit more about the proposed alternate fence detail? I didn't quite catch exactly what you have in mind.
So, the alternate would be just generally on these facilities, we use a, kind of wrought iron style. It's not iron, it's a steel fence, but a wrought iron look, black, black coated fence with spear points, if you will, at the top for security reasons. And we would propose to add to that some sort of horizontal color matched slat, but that's spaced on alternating sides. So that you still achieve a sight screening or sight obscuring look, but it still allows, air and wind to pass through. And then of course it doesn't have the same thermal mass. The other point I think I made in my email that Noriko included as an exhibit is I think we actually get better security that way by retaining the spear points at the top of the fence to prevent people from or discourage people from climbing it, versus a masonry wall where you've got kind of a broad masonry cap would actually, in my mind, be less secure.
And what kind of material are the horizontal slats?
Undetermined. I imagine that they would either be an aluminum extrusion or some sort of composite material.
But are we being asked to seriously consider this as an alternate now? Sorry, Robert, I keep jumping in here. If so, I don't see a drawing or a proposal or a detail or anything like that. So I'm not sure why we're talking about it if it's still just a thought in your head.
Yeah, I apologize. I guess I didn't understand that we would need to go to that level of detail at this point. So,
To present what you're proposing?
correct.
Okay.
I would think slats like that just create a ladder. Somebody just walks right up it. I don't think it's going to increase security. I think it would decrease security.
Yeah, I kind of think so too, but anyway.
Robert, any more questions?
No, I'm done for now.
I have a question. Along Gene Autry, the two corners of the building have glass, both facing Gene Autry and then facing the north and south. What is that glass? And when we look through it, what are we seeing? I notice on the plan it's called display corridor. So are we seeing a bunch of doors into these units, or is the glass going to be something that might be more obscure and it's just giving us a different material on the elevations?
It's a clear glass, and yes, you're seeing display doors on the interior, and it's an active corridor, that's connected to the rest of the building. It's not just a dead space, if you will. But yeah, you're seeing through to the building, through the interior, and the storage units within.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Tom Dosey.
Just for clarification, so the exterior access units on the south side, those are not really secured, if I'm looking at the site plan correctly?
Correct. Yes, we've acknowledged that, given the parameters of the site, that those handful of units fall outside of our quote unquote secure area.
And is there a reason in that buffer between the Desert Sun property and your property that could not become a wall along there so that the whole site could be secured?
I'm trying to think why. I think at some point we had fencing along there, but I'm trying to recall now why we moved away from that. I think there was a desire, like with respect to our primary gate, to move it back. The primary gate being at the southeast portion there, to move it back so you're not kind of presenting a barrier right there at the property line, if you will. And so in doing that, then re-secure that southern drive would have had an additional gate or an additional portal, if you will, you would have had kind of multiple gates and multiple fence scenarios going on, and it got kind of convoluted. So we didn't want to have that main gate right there at the property line, because then folks turning in, they've got to wait for the gate to be actuated. People just coming to the leasing office to pay a bill or buy some boxes or inquire about units, can't get into the site without having access or secure access or key card access.
I guess I've not seen where they've had exterior units that were not secured, but okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant?
Yeah, maybe one quick question. So
Sean?
generally, what are I think it's two actually. What's the height needed for the interior spaces? And are there individual different height areas that you guys are proposing in here?
You mean like within the storage spaces themselves?
That's right.
I mean, we generally, let's see, I think we generally start these things at 10 feet, just from a structural standpoint. You have an 8'8" door, and then your structural header, and then you go from there. These are built. This one will be built with it's a light gauge bearing wall system that just kind of proceeds up at a certain slope, and to our ridge in the middle. So yeah, you do end up with some additional height just by virtue of the roof slope as you get towards the center of the structure. But that's not driven by trying to necessarily create extra height within the storage unit itself. It's just
So generally, if I heard you correctly, and I'm just adding to that, ideally you would have a 10-foot, it says 10-foot roof, but I believe it's 10-foot ceiling. I'm referring to the elevation sheet on A301. Sorry, that's called out on the north elevation drawing.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Is that a ceiling height clear inside? It's also the height of your windows. So I think it's a ceiling, not a roof.
Yeah, well, in different places. So like above the storage doors that you're seeing in that is our, top of plate, if you will, bottom of purlin height. So
Okay.
I guess the beginning of your ceiling height at that location.
Mhm.
The way this roof kind of, slopes and steps up as you get, higher within the building, like out over those corner units, the corner elements that are along Geometry Trail, the roof, just by virtue of drainage and pitch and whatnot, is a little bit higher in that section.
I understand. Yeah,
So there's not like a hard lid within there at 10 feet.
roger that. So what's the height of your, you have a purlin or an open web truss system?
They're purlins, they're 8 inches thick or 8 inches tall Z purlins that make up the roof structure, and they just kind of step up with the framing
And then
within the main structure.
yeah, understood. And then a series of columns that support the beams.
They're bearing walls. It's light gauge framing that's on a 10-foot grid, and those purlins are actually placed immediately over light gauge studs.
Gotcha. Your equipment, let's just say, like worst case scenario, there's some equipment, but it appears to be shown in your renderings like it's more pushed to the center of the building, which is kind of appreciated because I guess where I'm going with this is the general height of the building, particularly on the east and the west and the north as you enter town and you're staring at this thing. It's high at 20 feet, but it really started with a 10-foot ceiling requirement. 10 foot plus 8-inch purlin, and even a really high slope to that. Let's say it was 2 feet in the center of that roof. That's still 12'8", and yet it's 20 feet tall, the building. And so, and just glancing at some of these letters earlier from the neighbors to the east, and I'm surprised the planning commission didn't bring too much up about this. The drive and the entry to the city, folks coming to the airport from different ends of the valley. To me, it's a major thoroughfare and it's a major view shed as you're coming around the bend and heading south towards the airport. And then again, almost the same thing, even as you're coming north. The building to the south is the building that's set back a bit far. And I think there's quite a bit of that area that you're going to, on the north, I guess it's the northwest corner of their parking lot, where you're going to see directly at that south facade of that building. And then as I look at the topography across the golf course to the east, there's a residential neighborhood over there. It's going to be looking west because that's their view. At the back of this building, there's a 20-foot tall storage building there. So I'm just trying to maybe think about the height there is where I was going with that. I don't
Thanks,
know if
Sean.
there's a question packed into that, but Got one more though, Tom, those windows again. So Tom asked about them. Can you explain that one more time? I feel like you said, and they're shown on the west facade here. Not quite sure what we're looking at, because I look at we're looking through that glass.
Sheet A310 might be a better peek at these, kind of corner elements, the
Yeah.
two renderings lower kind of right side of that page. So yeah, they're sitting on top of a cast in place concrete stem wall. And then like you said, or like you noted before, they go up to 10 feet, but they're just, it's storefront assembly, it's storefront.
310 or A3.01?
Sorry, 3.10, 310.
Gotcha.
So yeah, they're conventional 2-foot sight line, or sorry, 2-inch sight line aluminum storefront windows assemblies with clear glazing from a stem wall, on up to 10 feet. And you are looking into an active, kind of corridor within the building. And there's, so there's storage units and doors and whatnot within that.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah,
just
these renderings, I think go ahead,
that
sir.
one corner, is that right? Or that's
Both
two
the
corners?
northwest and the southwest corners have very similar features. The modulation, we've done slightly different things with the modulation of the windows and wall panels, but the elements are consistent at those two corners.
Okay.
Can I get another clarification on the south property line?
Yes, sir.
Sure, John McCoy.
You've got, I went and looked at Street View, and there's an existing oleander hedge, which is very healthy and well-maintained. Who maintains that? Is that on your property, or who takes care of it now? There's also street lighting in there. Who put that in and who maintains that?
I can't speak to who maintains it or who put it in. Those are all on the Desert Sun side of the property, so they're not on our property. So I couldn't speak to the maintenance, scenario around those.
Okay, so
that's
are you proposing new plantings?
To the north of
adjacent to
that,
the
so
existing?
to the north of that, on quote unquote our side of the property line, if you will, we would be proposing new additional landscaping. And of course, by virtue of creating these curb cuts, we'll have to, cut through some select areas of that. We're not proposing to change any of that. And the street lighting that's along that side is also on the Desert Sun side of the property line within the easement.
Okay. Then there's various places where you have some fixtures drawn on the face of the building, like where we were just talking about the windows. The drawing looks as if they're a little bit more sconce-like rather than a wall pack. Is that to be something decorative? What's the purpose of those?
It is a more decorative feature, being on the kind of the streets facing side and the pedestrian facing side. And I apologize. I do recall actually submitting the cut sheets. I don't know why they didn't make it your way. Though that was back at maybe at our first planning commission thing. So I don't know if they just didn't transfer or translate. But yes, it is a decorative. It's an LED fixture, but a decorative. I'm trying to find that cut sheet because I had it open a moment ago here. It is a decorative kind of sconce fixture. It's called the Balthus, Balthus fixture by Modern Forms. If you like, I have a cut sheet. I can share my screen if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Let me do that.
While you're doing it, I have a quick question for you. The lighting in the corridors that would be seen through the storefront windows, at nighttime, are those on motion sensors, or is it dark at night typically, or are they on all the time?
Jim, are you willing to, or can you speak to that?
Yeah, they're on at night, but they're on a time clock that they turn off. And we could set those for, 10 o'clock or whatever works.
So those corridors would be fully illuminated until the time that it would be timed off. Is that right?
Yeah, and then of course there's always night lights that's required, just for,
Of course.
But we could shut them off at a, conditioned time or whatever, at 10 o'clock or whatever. And then it would just be very faint light after that.
Okay, thank you.
Can y'all see this cut sheet on my screen of this this decorative sconce fixture?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So you get a sense of the fixture.
What are the
Go ahead.
hours of operation?
Typically 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And the office hours are typically from 9:30 to 6.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the fixture.
Absolutely.
So any additional questions of the applicant?
Quick question. Sorry, while you're sharing that fixture, that was an example of your exterior wall packs that are outlined on this EP 3.01? Is that right?
Let me do this again here.
Those are
those
the
are-
decorative sconces near the office and near the window area on the front.
Exterior.
Yes.
Yeah, these are exterior fixtures. Let me get back to the little renderings here. Occurring, I don't know if you can see my cursor at these locations. There's kind of one behind the tree here. There's one here. So kind of at these corner features.
Yeah, go back to that. How large are those and how's the light emitting from those?
So here's the scale. It's 21 inches tall,
Mhm.
about 9 inches wide, about just shy of 11 inches of projection from the building. And it's kind of got this what do you call this, kind of water glass type globe to it.
Yeah. Hey, just real quick. So that, I guess you said that's fixture MH09 or is that the FO2?
Let's look at the photometric again. It's fixture F. Mount MH is mounting height. It's fixture F02.
And so mounting height, what is 9, 15, 9, 9,
9 feet, 15 feet above grade.
Okay.
That's just how when they do the photometrics, how they've kind of figured the
Yeah,
distribution.
right. Just stay on this for 1 second. So FO2, if we follow that across, 467 lumens. So that's the non-brightest fixture here. While we're on this topic, though, if I look at FO3, for example, it's 15 feet high, according to this mounting height, now that I understand it. But if I look at just any of the FO3s, which they were the under canopy lighting along the north there, right?
Correct, yes.
And I look at the photometrics and I see like, wow, that's showing that there's 5.36 foot candles like directly underneath that fixture. And when I look at the specs on FO3, what I see is FO3 produces 8,671 lumens. And so at full brightness though, 8,671 goes down to 5. Like that seems incredible how that can possibly happen. 5 foot candles and 8,600 are coming out of that fixture. So I'm questioning this, like how is that possible?
Well, I think there's a translation from lumens to foot candles.
I'm
What that
looking
is.
at it. It's 10.76 lumens equals 1 foot candle. So let's say that's a tenth. It's 10%. That still seems like a ridiculous amount of foot candles, and yet on the photometrics, it's like almost nothing. Someone with 5 candles standing underneath that thing in their hand. Anyway, just as a point of reference, it's difficult to believe that photometric with that many lumens, particularly when there's a few fixtures right next to each other. like that. Like if you look over, if you move further east along that north facade, I mean, there's 2 fixtures over 2 parking spaces right next to each other. And yet there, it's 11.39, 11.42, 12.22 foot candles. 8,600 lumens coming out of 3 fixtures right there. Interesting. Seems difficult to understand the physics behind that. That's all I have.
Okay. Any more questions from the committee for the applicant?
Yeah, could he pull up the cut sheet on FO1?
Which one is that? FO1.
That's along the Gene Autry elevation.
Oh, this one here. Yes. Let me get there if I have it. So you guys don't need to watch me do that. Let me drag this over here. I think it's in a different spot.
Oh,
Can you see that okay?
I can.
Mhm.
9,600 lumens.
See if there's any other good shots of it here.
Oh,
It's a full cutoff LED wall pack.
My guess is this all has to be approved by the airport commission as well, the lighting.
They reviewed it. They didn't have any comments on the lighting. They've approved it, with certain conditions, some signage and notifications about the bioinfiltration swale. And the guidelines on the tree, the landscaping notwithstanding. And in that application, we do have to speak to, whether or not there's any uplighting, which there isn't, any other kind of reflective or glare causing surfaces. We noted the presence of the photovoltaics on the roof. They didn't take exception to that. So.
And is the bioswale part of your retention and drainage system?
It is, yes.
Okay.
It's part of the stormwater system. And they had qualifications on that as well, that it has to draw down within I believe 24-hour period, and we verified that it'll do that. And it's got to be aligned with riprap, can't be planted so that it doesn't again create habitat, appealing habitat for birds.
Okay. Thank you.
And so far along Gene Autry, where you have some landscaping, you don't have any landscape lighting. Is that correct? It's all
Correct.
off of the building.
Yeah, building mounted lighting, with the exception, there are a couple of fixtures, and this is required in the code for kind of lighting of entry points, but there's a couple of smaller scale fixtures at this entrance. And there's some along the entrance points along the easement. But this would be the only, I guess, for lack of a better term, landscape lighting along Gene Autry.
And can staff answer, are there any streetlights in this particular section existing or proposed to be new?
I'm gonna ask engineering to see if there's any existing street lighting on the public right away.
If we trust Google Earth, it does not look like there is any along here. Other than, there's a signal or
Yeah, there's a light over at the intersection.
at the intersection, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Though we have to take it with the Google Earth grain of salt. Like, I don't know what year that picture's from.
Yeah, Commission, this is Rick with engineering. There
Yes,
may
Rick.
be some lighting, excuse me, located within the median island itself, which Caltrans regulates. The median was built as part of a city enhancement project, but there are some uplighting inside the median on some of the sculptures and stuff. But other than that, just at the intersections where the traffic signals are, that's the only lighting that's available on Geometry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. As part of this discussion, we take public comments. Is there anybody in the waiting room from the public who would like to comment on this project? I don't see any, so let's have our committee discussion.
I'll
Robert?
start. Yeah. So I think there's some real issues of screening that need to be addressed. Coming from either direction, either north or south along Geometry, this building is going to be very much exposed. And both the north and south elevations have a lot of garage doors. And I don't think the existing hedge that is on the Desert Sun property, which looks like it may be 3-4 feet tall, is going to provide enough adequate screening for the project. I think I have some concerns about the lighting. Number one, the color temperature. I think it should be consistent for all exterior lighting. And I prefer something around 3,000, maybe 35 at the most, but 33,000 Kelvin would be preferred. I think anywhere we can get additional landscaping, that one little triangle along the entry gate at the southeast corner, to get a tree in that space would be helpful to help potentially screen some of the RVs. And I think actually at the north side, the northwest side, it looks like there's potentially another triangle that could be created to put some more landscaping, maybe a tree in there as well, which might help screen the RVs from Geometry. I think the block fence is preferable to the picket fence with the horizontal slats.
You mean block walls, Robert?
Or the block wall, yeah. Thank you. And I'm wondering along Geometry if we can't do a different type of lighting. I think the decorative sconces by the storefront are acceptable, but I think the wall packs, and if I read it correctly, was putting out 5,400 lumens is a lot. And I think it would be better to try and do something with landscape lighting to achieve some lighting along that elevation. I think that's all I got for now.
Well, my comment would be is I think for lack of a better term, the carport that's on the north side of the building, it doesn't make any sense to me. The other two elevations with exterior doors don't have any protection or any covering. This is on the north side of the building, which is the least sun issue. And the scale of it, it just looks very odd to me. It looks like it's not really part of the project. It doesn't seem to tie in to the design of the building. I also question the color of the garage doors, the blue. With all now, and maybe that's a corporate logo question because I notice the sign is blue, but I think it would certainly be more appropriate if it were more of a desert shaded color that blended with the walls. And I agree with the comments about screening, especially on the southern elevation. Other comments from the committee? Tom Dosey.
I'll concur with the comments that were just made and also add, there are other tree species available that could be used along the east side of the property line that would be more evergreen. We typically do not see the honey locust used, in the desert area. And I would recommend a different selection for that tree. I understand their need for spacing, but I believe there's some additional smaller or understory evergreen trees that could be added along the bioswale that would help with the screening towards the Ascena project.
Thank you, Tom. Sean.
So the general height of the building, I'd like it if that height could come down. I'm not, and as walls go up around the perimeter of the building to screen the building in addition to landscape, it'd be nice to see that height come down, particularly along the perimeter. So I understand there's probably a need for some mechanical. I think even at 12 feet and with the elevation of your pad and finished floor in relation to other adjacent grades, 12 feet with in general height or overall height as a general rule, I think would be adequate for the building. And particularly there could be an added screen much further in towards the center of the building, like your renderings show where your equipment's laid out. So I see that on A 3.10. There's a view looking west from North Gene Autry Trail, which shows some equipment enclosures even up on top of that, what I presume is the 20 feet height. So I'm not quite sure how you're even getting to that. And I don't know that you guys know either, because I don't see too many sections here. I saw a preliminary section of the building, but yeah. How are you getting to 20 feet in height? Is it just what's the height of that parapet around the perimeter?
Yeah, the 20 feet only occurs at these corner elements in this. Oh God, I'm pointing to the section. You guys can't see it here. Hold on. Share my screen again. So that parapet height occurs kind of at the three corners, I should say. Northwest, which is here, southwest, and then again at the I've got it in this view at the office, which is the southeast corner here. And I guess to clarify,
but then you've got 18 feet, like, so 18 feet is along the entire north facade, because that's where you have that canopy you're proposing that I believe Tom Jakeway was referring to when he was asking for that to be removed from the shady side of the building there. Is that correct? So
you can see. Sorry, I missed that. What's that?
I'm sorry. I was just saying, isn't that correct? That's shown as 17 foot 10 inches, so 18 feet. And then
Are you talking about? Sorry, you lost me there. Are you talking about the canopy itself?
The canopy itself looks like to me, if I go to north elevation, drawing number 2, drawing sheet A 3.01, there's several drawings on there where there's, the top of the parapet that's at 20 feet high, but then there's quite a bit that's at 1710. Particularly on drawing number 2, which is that north elevation, that's that sort of shade canopy Tom Jakeway was just referring to.
Right.
Isn't that correct? That's 1710. I'm just calling it 18 because it's
and that 17 foot 10 or 18 feet, that reference, if you will, is actually at this what we're calling the mid parapet, which occurs along North Gene Autry Trail. So you can see the 20 feet high and the 20 foot parapet occurs at these kind of corner elements, northwest and southwest corners, and then steps down. We step down with this little break in the building here down to a almost 16 foot parapet, and there's a recess here to give some modulation. and then it steps back up a couple feet to that.
Yeah, so, and you and I verbally, we talked through a quick section, just a hypothetical section there really quickly, where we talked about a 10-foot ceiling height, maybe a 2-foot overall slope of the top of an 8-inch structure. So it's 2'8" plus 10 feet, 12'8". So that's still another 7 and change.
Well, if I could speak to that, and I hear where you're going. So yeah, you're correct. We get to roughly a 12-foot height at this ridge. But as we kind of then come to the east and west extremes of that ridge, here and here, the way that the structure is, we've got a kind of a step up to a slightly different roof structure, and this goes towards how these buildings are constructed, and this 10-foot bearing wall system that I talked about. So when you get to this kind of this margin, if you will, right along here, hopefully you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Then my structure steps up a little bit, and you can see my slope changes where kind of the main roof, the big chunk of roof, is sloping this way and this way. When I get to this margin, I step up and I'm actually sloping kind of back towards this primary roof, and there's a little step in the roof for reasons of drainage. So that parapet then, it's coming up even, starting at a 12-foot point and coming up even higher yet until it hits.
So but is the roof truly draining? Is the roof draining north and south, or north, south, east, and west into the back wall of these stepped up parapets and flat roof areas?
Ultimately, it's draining to the north and the south.
Okay.
But these kind of angled elements, if you will, drain down onto the primary roof, which then drains north and south.
Mhm.
And so by virtue of that, this is the North Genotry Trail side here at the right side of my screen. Again, when I come to this juncture right here, then I start to slope up again until I hit the back of that parapet. So because of some of those steps and the way that the structure itself is configured, we get to a taller structure height, if you will, at the back of
Yeah,
that.
I'm with you.
And
So it looks like, I guess what I'm asking though is like, why does it even have to be designed this way then? Like, it seems like that was your choice, and we're ending up with 20-foot and 18-foot tall lengthy facades of buildings with not a lot of design to it. So if I just stay on that sheet, A3.1.0, and I look at that sort of the middle left aerial perspective looking west from North Genotry Trail, I don't know how to say it other than that building is not pretty. There's no design to this block wall here. I guess there's 2 brown stripes running horizontally through it. I guess that's some kind of design feature, but I don't quite get it. It's this kind of mustard yellow facade at the north and south ends of that corner with this popped up facade, which we all know is fake because it's a 10-foot ceiling in there, and then the height of that's 20 feet tall. So to me, it's not even being true to the form, and it makes it even less attractive to me. And there's just not much design here for this. So when I look at the requirements of what we're to be reviewing here, and is it architecturally interesting? I guess that's a matter of taste. This isn't to me. There's nothing special being done with the block or the facade here. We look through clear glass windows and look at some pretty bright LED lighting. We're also looking at a vinyl sign on the side of a building. Didn't even get to talk about the lighting on that yet. I don't know, man. This just feels like this is a kind of a major gateway to the city as people go to the airport from all over this valley. I don't know if people from the west are really coming down south on this road, but I know lots of people use it as a cut through from the south to the north also. I just feel like, gosh, we can do better than this. And I've just got a lengthy laundry list here of other items. I kept on some of these now. There's the blue doors. I don't don't get it. I don't know if that was a question Tom was asking, if that was a corporate identity stipulation, the blue doors, but that just seems like it's from out in left field.
That is a corporate color for them, yes. That's
Mhm.
driver there. We did on this west facade, in this kind of central portion, we had in previous iterations added some other kind of modulation into that wall. And as somebody noted, there was some additional sunshades to create some other shadow lines and articulation along that wall. We removed that at the request of staff. And to simplify that kind of central section of that facade.
You successfully done. It's simple along that west facade. Mission accomplished. It just looked like I don't understand the style or what it's trying to achieve here aesthetically, or how this fits in with. I don't know. The Desert Sun building's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's making some strides at doing something more contemporary here, and even with its setbacks from the facade that seemed to work out well and create some kind of identity for them. I appreciate you guys are pushing up to the setback and trying to max out the building here, but geez, I don't know that we want to get stuck looking at this for the next 50 years.
I would agree, Sean, with everything you're saying. And the other thing I would point out is that wall along Ginatri is just dead flat along that whole length. Yes, it does change in some materials. And there are those two little recesses with the metal panels, but I would think it needs to have much more articulation in and out than just that long flat wall. Especially if you take all the trees off of these renderings and look at the true building that you're seeing, it really becomes very stark and very plain.
And very, like, I don't know, another strip mall somewhere between here and LA somewhere. It just, yeah, again, I think this is what we're looking at for 50 years. Right in our face, because it's right along the side of the street. Right now, there's not much landscaping at all, except some broomsticks and these palm trees we're looking at in this same rendering here. Haven't even moved from A 3.1.0. Still just staring at that rendering.
Mr. Chair, if I might just add, the applicant, he may have the exhibits that were provided to the Planning Commission. Maybe you can show those to see, can you see what was shown in that iteration?
Oh, along that west facade?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I actually think that's what was in our packets, because it showed some fenestration. I mean, they're not windows, but there was some blocks of different colored block. Is that what it was?
Let me bring it up here.
Some horizontal boxes that are on that elevation between the building corners.
I'm not seeing it.
Some light overhangs above.
At the bottom of 3.01.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this iteration, we can you all still see my screen? I think you can. We had created some kind of sill height recesses in the masonry with these added sunshades along that expanse.
That one there too. I mean, that one almost looks like, like the loading bays at Costco just got blocked over or something there. I don't, I mean, it's some articulation, but I don't understand like what the style is, where that's coming from, how that relates to some of the more contemporary things going on in Palm Springs there. I just feel like that's another one I've seen about 35 times between here and LA, San Bernardino.
Well, and I think if I might, I'm Colleen Nolan, I'm the landscape architect for the project. you know, what you're seeing in the renderings, you know, there are trees, but then we do also have quite a bit of landscape, you know, not only just in front of the building, but also within the parks, you know, parkway area that add more interest, you know, to the overall plan. If, you know, you can bring that up just sheet L 1.1. You know, so there, not only, you know, do we have some of the landscape boulders, but then also larger plant material, smaller, you know, just kind of throughout that whole area there to add some interest. We have to, like, as Dirk had mentioned, with, you know, the airport across the street, we do have to be very, very careful about not creating habitat, you know, for the birds and, you know, all of the other critters that are out there, mostly the birds, you know, and, you know, we do, that's why we also went with the more desert landscape that's appropriate for that area. And to add some additional landscape, I think, you know, we would have to kind of go back through the airport process and say, hey, you know, are they okay with, you know, certain, you know, additions, and especially trees, because that's where it's going to create the habitat for the birds.
A couple comments on that, though. Let me handle a couple of these. One is I can't 100% tell what's going on in this landscape plan because the landscape legend, I don't see any real symbols next to it on the left.
Yeah, there's symbols right
shrubs.
there. Yeah, I have exact symbols for every plant that's there.
Not on our sheet.
No, Sean, I agree with you.
There's two
That-
iterations of the landscape plan. There's one that was originally submitted to the planning commission that's earlier in the packet. There's the revised version that's later in the staff packet.
So okay, well, I'm looking at the version that doesn't show any symbols next to the shrubs, like you're seeing right there. Whoever's sharing this screen, those symbols next to those plants are not on what I have.
Okay, so yeah, that's an older
Number
version.
one. But two,
Yeah, that was an older version of the plan, and so I had
so let me just deal with this thing about the birds too. Like a lot of talk about the birds. I'm looking next door at the desert sun, and some of this site looks like a jungle.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we also need to establish, you know, how old is that
there's lots of
building?
trees we can add in landscape to the site because I'm looking at it right next door.
Right, but I think what we need to do is go like per the current standards, you know, and, you know, I'm not sure how old that Desert Sun building is, but,
Well,
you
the
know,
airport was there before it got erected, pretty sure of that.
right. So, you know, I mean, we can
Hey,
only go off
Colleen.
of the guidelines that were shown.
Their report is a part of the staff report. It's included their conditions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Sean, too, as you mentioned on the plant palette, it's called out plants, and most of them are 1 gallon, but it's
It's 1 gallon, so they're gonna be dead in a year, and then.
yeah, and they're called out on center versus quantities, you know, even though the symbols are showing, there should be a correlation between the quantities. There should be quantities on there.
Well, right, and that's typically when we get into CDs, you know, at the preliminary level, which is the planning commission level and everything else, typically quantities aren't on here. As a courtesy, I actually went through and, you know, the actual plant, you know, planting plan and added, you know, symbols for every single shrub that's out there and trees as well. And so, because before I had more generic symbols, when it's this desert type of landscape, you know, usually I would have a hatch pattern that shows all the planting, you know, like with one hatch pattern. But
I'm
in
not
this
sure why
case, it's
that's a
different.
courtesy. I think one of the requirements for submittal is a landscape plan. So whether or not that fits into your schedule of CDs or drawings, I don't quite get it. Because a landscape plan, planting plan is required. So is a landscape lighting plan.
Okay. Yeah, and typically, you know, typically at this level, it's much more schematic. And I
Not
don't
sure what you mean about
plan.
typically, because in this city, it's a requirement.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, this is the more current version. And so I hope you guys have this because this shows every plant proposed. I don't have quantities on there, but I can get those for you.
Well, I think we're barely even getting into this because there's so many other issues with the project, including adding walls and things like that, which I think is tricky, particularly along the west where it's got this meandering sidewalk and the building right there. But talking about adding walls to the project, garden walls of height we haven't even gotten into yet, and it's on the north, south, east, and west sides of this building. one of the reasons for the wall is because I think, remember Rahman brought it up, but like, as you're approaching this building from the south and looking across that Desert Sun parking lot, looks like quite a bit of landscapes being proposed to just utilize what the neighbors have done on the south side, which to me it's pretty light. As I'm looking at Google Earth and looking at the low shrubbery on the south side of this building. And then there's an open field to the north. So yeah, there's a couple trees shown on here, but and some shrubs, but even sizes, 1 gallon, I think that's a no-go. I would say 5 and 15s at a minimum, and then a whole lot more trees.
So how do we approach that with, I guess, the airport, and their guidelines with the
I
trees?
don't know. I'd like to see those guidelines, but like, something's got to be done to screen this building, and because I don't want to look at this for 50 years. Luckily, I won't be around that long, but
Well, the other option is to develop something of interest. Sorry, Sean.
That's okay.
Well, no, the architecture should carry itself.
Yeah, but I think the landscape, I mean, I don't know, Tom, I think the landscape complements it a bit, and this looks like two very different designs. It's got a landscape design on it. It's got an architecture design. Neither one of them are impressive. I'm gonna stop talking.
I think one of the challenges is wanting to use every single available square foot of buildable area for building instead of allowing to have some undulation to the face of the building, push it out right onto the setback. So I can't support this project as it exists now, and I think that we need to see some better consideration for the undulation of the facade along Geneatry Trail and screening, especially on the south side of the building.
Yeah, and like, open up some design books or something, because this thing looks like a straight out of Tilt Up World, San Bernardino, except that it's made out of masonry and got some boxy elements on the north and south corners there. But like, man, please no.
Yeah, I have some concern on the east side for the neighbors. We didn't even discuss the pole lights, lighting the roof of the motorhome area, lighting the roofs of the motorhomes that will be there. They're at 25 feet mounting height. The wall packs are at 9 feet, and there's no way that there's not going to be light escaping off of this site and light trespass.
12 and 15 foot tall they were.
Right. Wall packs along that side, I believe, are at 9. But yeah, the double lights at 25 feet. That's a lot. So there you go.
And 12 feet. If you're talking about on the east side facing the golf course and the residences, the ones along that building, the FO1s are 12 foot tall.
Yeah, but then the pole mounted lights
Or
on the
25.
opposite side are 25.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just trying to help you make your point, John, that they're.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Mhm.
Yes, you're right. There's the 12. That's it.
Any other comments? John Walsh.
Mr. Chairman, I would just, again, to tag along with what John McCoy had mentioned, it started with the issue of screening on the east side. And the letters from the neighbors have been articulate and clear, and their concerns justified. This is a view corridor for them to San Jacinto to the west. And it seems as though the research in terms of the impact of the regional airport control and what they were requiring should have gone into the mix on day one. I realize that this is a approved site plan, but this is too big a neglected issue within the design to just pass it off and say that's the way it is. I don't hear a solution, and I don't have one. So that, as well as I would just put some different and overall words on the clear and detailed concern about the architectural design. There is a huge lack of cohesion from one elevation to another. And although there seems to be an interest in sort of making something, on one elevation different than another, it doesn't make sense. And for all its flaws, I'm sure the neighboring building, the Desert Sun, it does have some level of pulled togetherness of it that you get a sense of. So beyond that, there hasn't been much said that I haven't been in agreement with. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. So do we have a motion?
Well, before you do that, Chairman, this is Jim with the ownership. I mean, is it possible to table this and come back? We've heard you try to incorporate, everything that we discussed today. And I certainly don't want to be denied if that means any kind of restriction on coming back to you.
I don't think it.
Well, I think maybe is what we could do is continue this item and ask for a resubmittal from the applicant in response to our comments. But not a denial, but a continuation.
Okay, thank you, sir.
That wouldn't that have to be a motion, Tom? Because I don't see.
Yes, I would make a
discussion.
motion that we continue this item until the developer can submit revised designs.
But continue feels like revise a couple drawings. This feels like a major overhaul.
Well, maybe my word drawings was too light. Revise the design.
Restudy.
Well, why don't you, David, what is the difference in terms of for the applicant between a denial and a continuance?
The difference is a continuance would return to the committee. A denial would have to be appealed to planning commission. There would not be a matter, the matter would not come back before the ARC. So
a continuance is a preferred route.
It is for me now. I feel like planning commission, but fell asleep at the wheel on this one first time around.
Well, I'll second Tom's motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We'll continue this item. Okay, I see Mindy's name on the list. Should we return to item number 2?
Can we take a 5-minute recess? That one was lengthy.
That makes some sense. Yeah, we'll be back at 7:25.
Okay, over and out.
Okay, it is 7:28 and we are going to continue with our meeting, and we are on item number 2, new business. Mindy Reed for a land use permit and waiver to continue the use of an enlarged parklet located at 140 South Palm Canyon Drive. We have a staff report, please.
Yes, Chair, just to continue what the presentation was before, the applicant is now here and can answer questions, and I'm also available if the community still has questions on that matter.
Great, thank you. Could the applicant make you have 10 minutes to give us a presentation of your request. Please give us your name. Oops, you're muted.
Mindy Reed. I own Rebel Public House, and I don't have a big fancy presentation. I just turned everything into planning, but basically I want to build out the parklet to be similar to what Tequila has done. Cover the K-rail, put a nice wooden structure there, and some soft lighting with some rope lights, and I'm not sure what else what other questions you guys have on that. Remove the plants and the planters and the things that are there now. And then a sign on the north end of the parklet in lieu of a A-frame or any other signage.
Okay, I think really we were most interested in having a few questions for you. So if the committee has questions for Mindy. Question I had, Mindy, are you going to be putting a mister system on this parklet?
Yes.
And I noticed you said that the water and electric come across the sidewalk at 8 feet above the sidewalk. What are they in? Are we just seeing a pipe or a conduit, or is it contained in something?
Right now it's not contained in anything. The electric is currently coming from the light post. So it's the city light. It's on very infrequently, and it's LED rope lights. And then the water, there was a temporary misting system last summer that was that came across the top on a airplane cable from the roof of the building where the misters are currently on the patio awning.
I noticed you mentioned that on the metal grill work that there's going to be a reflective paint behind it. Can you give us a better description of that?
Well, my thought was that when I read the requirements for the parklet, that you guys wanted something reflective to be on the outside. And I thought that if there was reflective paint inside the metal, that would kind of shine through when people's lights hit it, without it being obnoxious or just looking like a temporary, afterthought.
Right, okay. Other committee members have questions? Robert?
Yeah, just on that subject. So are you putting like a board of some sort behind the cutout metal screen that's painted? Yes, okay, all right. And then I didn't see a cut sheet on the particular fixture you're looking to use on the post. And I'm curious, so as I understand it, you've got some sort of conduit coming off of your building across the public way, feeding to this structure. And then you're gonna have conduit coming down to a J box mounted on the posts. And then the fixture sits on top of that. Is that right?
The fixture for the
decorative lantern type fixture.
Oh, I'm open to your guys' recommendations on that. When I had the architect draw the elevation, he put the little lights on the post.
Yeah.
That I don't believe Tequila has something like that they just have the string lights going by. So I'm open to whichever one of those you guys would prefer and thinks looks nicer. I'm not committed to either one.
Okay, that wasn't clear in the staff report. Okay. And then in the staff report, it also mentioned something about you wanted a wheel stop, if that was permitted. And I'm just curious where you wanted to put those.
Oh, my thought was just to put it on the exterior of the north end. Basically right where the parking space would end, just to kind of prevent one more point of preventing anybody from hitting the parklet.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
And I'd just like to clarify on the string lights, you're really talking about like cafe lights, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had one question. It shows the metal frame and there's like a top and sides. Is there is that like a 2x4 on top, a 2x6? In the elevation, it's not called out.
A 4x4 was what I had, was intending to use. Very similar, very similar to what Tequila did. Basically, just copying what they did. I think it looks really nice. I think it looks very professional, and so I was basically going to just copy what they did as far as that went.
Okay, thank you.
Mindy, could you talk about the landscaping? I know you're going to take away the metal, I call them horse troughs. And what is your intention? Are you going to put in some potted plants that would sit on the parklet? Or
in the drawing that I submitted, we actually took the plants pretty much out, and I would probably just put some potted plants in if there was space and if it looked nice to have them. I know that Tequila on the north end kind of built a, lack of a better word, a waiter station kind of on top of the K-rail. So since you have to cover the K-rail, there's a, like a 2-foot section there. So, I would consider maybe just putting a couple of smaller plants on that just to kind of create some ambiance, maybe some rosemary or something that would smell good, and no extensive plants like I have now. I just really, at the time, put the plants up, the palm trees and stuff to try to just create a barrier because we didn't have any other options at that time.
okay, thank you. Are there any public comments? Is there anybody in the waiting room who would like to make a comment on this submittal? Okay, we'll just finish up our committee discussion. Committee thoughts, ideas, concerns?
I have a question for
John McCoy?
I have a question for David or Rick. With the wheel stop, is that allowed? And how would it be installed, and what would it do to the city street?
My recollection is we require the K-rail as the barrier, but as another safety mechanism, I'm not sure staff has any concern. I don't know if Mr. Minhar has any additional comments.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, we would not allow the wheel stops in the public right of way. They can become a trip hazard. So it would just be the K-rail itself.
Okay, thank you.
And that's fine with me. I basically put it in there just as a second barrier of protection, and because it was in the guidelines that the city gave me.
I have one question. It's
Sure, Robert.
It's not clear, or maybe I missed it. What color are you going to paint this white?
I wasn't planning on painting it white. Probably a dark brown to match the colors that are already in the building that I'm in, which is the Plaza building. So using the rust color and the dark brown, almost black, to complement the colors that are currently used in the frontage of the Plaza.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say, I think it's a nice solution. It definitely cleans up what we're seeing there now. So I would be in favor of this.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make is I think the lanterns hanging on the outside on the street side would be a little bit troublesome for the vehicles coming down the Palm Canyon. So I think the lanterns shouldn't be on the street side, certainly.
And I agree. And I think on the sidewalk, they're a bit of a hazard too to pedestrians who are walking by.
Yeah, so I think we just stick with the cafe lights.
Okay.
Like to add one item, Mr. Chairman, that whatever, as the application says, where their space allows, that whatever pots or planters are used, that they be consistent in color and size.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion and include that in it?
I'll make a motion for approval with the comments as listed.
That would be to remove the lanterns, and to any planters that are used have to be consistent in size and color.
Right, and I believe the deletion of the wheel stop.
Correct. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who is that?
John Walsh.
John Walsh. Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Mindy.
Thank you all very much. for your time.
Okay, item number 4. I believe Sean is going to be recusing himself.
I am.
Thank you, Sean, for your input this evening.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
We're going to go item number 4, Studio AR&D Architects on behalf of Henri and Jennifer, I'm going to kill it, Corpron, for a major architectural application to construct a 5,436 square foot single-family residence with a 922 square foot. It says attached garage. Oh, that's to the residence. And then a 632 square foot detached garage with a maximum building height of 19.1 feet on a 49,712 square foot hillside property located at 2363 Winter Sun Drive. We have a staff report, please.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening. This is a proposed project within the Desert Palisades specific plan area. The applicant is proposing to construct a single family residence at this project site, which consists of 2 parcels. The project site consists of lot 8 and number 9, and the total area of the site is 1.14 acres. And the project site, which currently consists of 2 parcels, will be consolidated by lot merger as a part of this project. And very notable feature about this particular site is 2 existing natural drainage channels that run through the project site. As you see on this dotted line right here, 1 and 2. These are the images of the existing the site. As you can see, there's not really much going on in terms of a development as of today. There's no one existing house on the west side of the project site, on the other side of the open space. And the area is very rocky in a very pristine natural condition. The applicant is proposing the single family residence, which consists of 5,436 square feet of the primary living area, with an attached garage, which is 922 square feet, in addition to a detached garage, which is 632 square feet. The proposed building height measured at the highest point is 19.1 feet. And the applicant has submitted an administrative minor modification for the proposed the building height. This is a proposed site plan. What's very noticeable about this design is that because of this existing natural drainage that's going through the project site, the applicant is proposing a cantilever design in the area or the portion of the residence that projects over the natural drainage channel. And in addition to the residence, the applicant is proposing 2 bridges, pedestrian bridges, that's going to allow pedestrian access on site. In addition to the ground-mounted solar panels at the end of the driveway. The 2 garages, detached garage and attached garage, their openings side facing. And there will be a pool in the southern part of the lot. And this is just to show the proposed floor plan of the residence. The floor plan again of the detached garage. Applicant is proposing a green roof on top of this detached garage. And the roof plan, in addition to the ground mounted solar panels, applicant is proposing rooftop solar panels. Just to show the outline of the roof line, there will be several skylights proposed for this residence as well. And this is just to show the elevation of the proposed residence. The proposed construction materials include a metal eave, smooth stucco, concrete walls, and a blackened steel that are all going to be in the desert neutral color palette. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some areas that's going to be overhanging over, projecting over the existing natural drainage channel. As you can see this right here on the surrounding elevation. And these are the elevations of the proposed detached garage. As I mentioned, there will be a green roof on top of this detached structure. And again, the proposed building height generally is less than the maximum 18 feet as required by the Desert Palisades specific plan development standards. However, there's a portion, as you see here on the north elevation, there's a tiny bit of area that projects beyond the 18-foot building height, so-called pillow. And the applicant submitted a rendering to show what part of the building projects above the 18-foot threshold. And this is another drawing just to show how the proposed building and the height is going to be at this project site. And these are the renderings just to show how the proposed property is going to look like when it's viewed from the street. Additional images to show the overall the form of the building and how the architectural elements relate to each other. Additional rendering show the entry area, the view of the residence taking from the south yard. And this image right here just to show how the residence is going to be floating above existing natural drainage channel. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant is proposing a bridges for pedestrian access to the site. And these are the materials that are proposed for the project, which includes a wood, stone, metal. All of them are going to be so-called desert neutral color palette. And based on the submittal, staff finds that the project generally is consistent with the Desert Palisades specific plan development standards, except for the proposed maximum building height. However, the applicant did submit an AMM application as prescribed in the zoning code, and the project meets the hillside review criteria and the findings. And then the project also meets the architecture review criteria. There are minor adjustments that may be required to the design. For instance, the staff thinks that the installation of additional landscaping material on the north side of the ground mounted solar panels may be desirable to conceal or screen the equipment, as well as some of the lighting fixtures. The direction of the light source can be adjusted so that they will not be directed towards the adjacent lots or open space. In addition to the findings of the hillside review and architecture review criteria, staff finds that the applicant's request for AMM approval is justified due to complicated site conditions. And then also the project is consistent with other design guidelines of the Desert Palisades specific plan. The minor adjustments to the plan to conform to the applicable zoning code and the design guidelines is not going to alter the nature of the project. And for the reason, staff recommends that the Architecture Review Committee approve the project subject to the conditions that are attached to the staff report, which include additional installation of additional planting material next to the solar panels, and then also adjust the direction of the light fixtures. This concludes the staff presentation, and the staff and applicant are both available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Committee, questions of staff? If there's no questions of staff, we will have the applicant make a presentation to us. You have minutes, and give us your name, please.
Yep. Hi, Nick LaFaro here from Studio ARD Architects. Trying to adjust my camera. So today we've applied for a major architectural application for the construction of a single family residence with a detached garage. It's currently on 2 lots of Desert Palisades that we're currently in the process of merging. So the reason we applied for the AMM was due to a height violation at the existing natural arroyo that slopes down from the adjacent natural grade anywhere from like 1 foot to 13 feet deep. So because the way Desert Palisades is set up, your allowable building envelope is kind of a drape effect where you take your natural grade and you're offsetting that 18 feet up. So because we have this natural arroyo and we projected that up 18 feet, that's why we're violating by a foot. So if you look everywhere else in that diagram, and next to all other adjacent finished grade, we are well underneath that 18 feet. Like I said, this is on 2 separate parcels. I believe we're the first project in Desert Palisades to be merging 2 parcels together. So from my understanding with Rick Manjares, the way that's working is in Desert Palisades, there's these no build easements between the buildable lots. So this lot, lot 8, adjacent to the west is a non-buildable green area. So we don't have a no build easement there. In between lots 8 and 9, we do. And then next to lot 9, we have lot 10, which is another buildable. So there's a no build easement on our east property line. What we're proposing is when we get rid of that censored property line between lots 8 and 9, we're going to relocate those existing no build easements over to the east side of lot 9. So that will result in extra green natural space between lots 9 and future lot 10 home in Desert Palisades. So more site conditions, we've got an overall change of 30 feet across the site from northwest to northeast. So we've incorporated this natural slope into our main house by creating multiple levels through the house, the highest being the garage at the northwest and the lowest at the southeast in the guest bedrooms. This actually helped us because the cross-site slope worked in favor of our most optimal views, which are towards the valley floor, towards South Palm Springs. Other site conditions we responded to, the natural boulder terrain intensifies as you kind of walk the 2 arroyos that naturally convey the water and historical flow paths across the site. So the major of the 2 arroyos spans along the north street side of lot 8 and then traverses in a southerly direction across the center of lot 9. We made it our goal to work around this and to not disturb that natural course as much as possible. So this resulted in justifying the location of the house towards the west and the southerly sides. We've also been working closely with Rick Manjares at Public Works, along with our civil engineer. And this isn't the first iteration. We've been working multiple meetings with them, trying to situate this building site with respecting the arroyo. Desert Palisades specific plan has this great condition where they don't want to see a garage facing the street. So we've got our side entry garage up at the northwest corner. And so we had to offset and kind of pull our building a little further east in order to allow for that side entry garage. That was kind of one of our first critical steps. And we knew we wanted to locate it there because a driveway cutting through the arroyo was never going to work. So that's kind of where we started. We placed the garage at the northwest corner and set the building back further from the setback. And this actually resulted in growing our not so usable front yard space from the 25 required to about 50 feet. We also cantilever the gym and bedroom floor spaces like Noriko pointed out in order to mitigate the disturbance of that arroyo. Along with the main house, we have this detached garage on lot 9, features this planted roof to blend with the site. We've got this bridge that crosses the arroyo. And we do have those solar panels located south of the garage on the site. And those will be on a raised kind of steel structure and they would follow the natural slope of the site. We chose to do this and split our solar panels kind of 50-50 on the site and the roof, because we wanted to screen them more from the street, and especially because this is kind of at the northwest location of Desert Palisades, where there's heavy traffic coming down Tramview Way. So we wanted to kind of keep these things off of the roof. And we agree with Noriko that we can get some boulders and some trees at the end of that garage, that detached garage driveway, in order to screen that better. It's on the north side of these solar panels, so not too worried about those casting shadow on the solar panels. Other things, the architectural materials we chose for their ability to blend with and to complement the natural environment and the surrounding mountains. So we have this colored concrete that's poured to resemble rammed earth and will mimic the surrounding mountains. We'll also be playing with the gradients of colors in that concrete that translates the grays and tans of the grounds with the darker mountains in the background. We've also selected these black fiber cement panels in kind of limited special areas to contrast the natural aesthetic of the rammed earth. We're proposing vertical wood boarding batten details in kind of a darker brown tones, some steel, both oxidized, natural rusted, and painted, and some travertine throughout. And then we do have most of our field would be kind of this earthy, putty kind of colored stucco, smooth integral color. We think that, you know, the construction methods of these materials will present in a refined and linear manner. The main feature wall of the residence is the rammed earth wall that connects itself to the site, both in color and texture. We chose this material as the material to face the street so that it would appear very grounded and of the earth at the western end. But then as your eye moves across the wall towards the east from right to left, where the natural grade and arroyo dips down, we've actually cantilevered that concrete wall too. So it kind of looks like it's extending and projecting off of the natural terrain there. Overall, we think that this is a great project that's really stretching the boundaries of the architecture in Desert Palisades in an attempt to respect the natural arroyo, the natural terrain, while still integrating well with all of the surrounding mountains, the sand, through a pretty bold and creative architecture, material choices, and structure. Yep, and I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Nick.
Yep.
Committee members, questions? Nick, I have a couple questions. Are the arroyos actually active during big storms, or did the developer reroute that water up top?
They have rerouted that water and they're not as active. I do have Alan Sanborn, our civil engineer here, and Rick Manjares, I think, could help answer that.
Okay. A couple things
I
that
see Rick just hopped on.
Okay, a couple things that I'm confused with looking at the drawings. I can see that the gym is cantilevered and that bedroom 3 is cantilevered. Is the master bedroom cantilevered off the ground also?
It is not.
Okay.
Yep.
From the gym and bedroom 3, are there balconies, or does the sliding glass door just open, and will it need a guardrail because of that?
So bedroom 2 and closet 2 do not have balconies. The gym, you can open up those sliders and there will be a glass railing.
Okay.
Outside. Yep.
And what about, similar question, on the roof of the garage? Somebody could easily walk up that planted roof. Do you think you're going to be required to have guardrails up there? Because it's more than 4 feet off the ground.
It is more than 4 feet off the ground at the southern end. At the north end, what we're doing is we're integrating boulders and, you know, this desert cacti to help prevent people from walking up there.
And one thing that I've been scratching my head, I haven't been able to figure it out. Looking at your front elevation, to the right side of the entry door, there's a window.
Yes.
That's kind of a wedge shaped, but I can't figure does it touch the ground? Is it a cantilevered element? Does it have a roof over it? What is that?
So it's a little pop-out steel window. From the interior, it's got a sill height of 18 inches, and it's got a header height of 6'8" or so. From the exterior, we've got natural grade that's going up. So we're utilizing our concrete wall as a retaining wall, and we're kind of creating this bottom detail where it's following the grade, and it'll be about 6 inches floating above that natural sloping grade.
And so is let me call it a roof, is the top of that window, that wedge, just a sheet of steel?
It'll be a sheet of like 1/4 inch, 3/16 steel plate, and we'll have a little slope in it that kind of helps drain the water or shed the water towards the north. A little like 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch per foot slope.
And one final question on the roof itself. How are you handling the drainage? Are there roof drains, or does it go to gutters? Does it just wash over the eave? What's the situation there?
So for the most part, it is washing over the eave. Along the front wall, which is this concrete wall, we've got 4 roof drains in there. So, you know, if you're looking at the main east-west portion of this building, from the dining room to the guest bedrooms, we've got a ridge that's shedding water towards the north and to the south. And then we have some that's shedding towards the east and west. Everything that's shedding towards the north is going into roof drains that are tied into our yard drain system. Everything towards the south is shedding down off the eaves.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions from the committee for the applicant? Robert. Yes, Robert.
Yeah, so on sheet PL6, let me just go there because I just went away. There's like a dotted line around the pool area. What is that graphically representing?
Yeah, that's graphically representing our pool enclosure that we're going to be providing on this project. The clients just had their first grandchild, and you know, they're very concerned with the safety, as is the city of Palm Springs, particularly with these Desert Palisades projects with securing the pool.
Okay, great. Talk a little bit about HVAC. It looks like you have something over on the west side off of the garage that's handling HVAC. And is there a soffit running through the house, or how are you running the ductwork from that point?
Yeah, actually, we're using quite a bit of underground HVAC for this project because we are cantilevering. So actually, you know, we're cantilevering this gym and we're cantilevering this bedroom 3, but we did need some structure underneath that, obviously. So I'm not sure which sheet it's on in here, but we do have a lower kind of level basement that's accessed through a little crawl space underneath kind of bedroom, bathroom 2. And that's going to be feeding an underground HVAC system for the guest bedrooms and the gym. For the living room, that's on its own zone, and that's going to be utilizing underground, as well as some vertical chases for getting returns and vertical supply grills in there. And then in bedroom 1, we're also utilizing underground with some drop ceiling spaces. So we actually have no dog houses or HVAC enclosures on top of the roof. As far as exterior AC condensers, the garage also has a small mini split system for it. And we're locating its its brother AC condenser, which is a smaller kind of briefcase size, with the 5-ton AC condenser for the living room. That's going to be south of our trash enclosure, which is on the west side of the driveway at that attached garage. The master bedroom has its own HVAC AC condenser outside, and that one we're kind of creating this boulder pocket that we're going to help screen, and we're going to plant with native material like brittle bush that'll grow pretty quickly out here and hide that. And then the guest bedrooms and gym, those needed 2 AC condensers, and we have those on the west side of the detached garage, kind of on the other side of the arroyo.
Okay. It looks like you have 2 different driveway materials for the different garages. At least on PL6, they're graphically shown differently. What are those materials?
Yeah, so the main driveway is gonna be a stone paver. You know, the reason why it's 2 separate materials is as you're entering Desert Palisades towards this house, you're entering from the east. And we really didn't want to confuse guests. Like, oh, there's a driveway, like let's drive up that one. So what we've done is we've created 2 different materials, and the easternmost for the detached garage, that one's going to be this hand-seated exposed aggregate concrete hardscape. So that one we're going to take, it's going to blend in with the surroundings more, you know. And then the western, the main driveway is going to be this stone paver. It's actually the same stone paver we used at our DP50 house up there.
Okay. And then I was trying to understand the detached garage. And from the elevations, which I think are, was it PL10? I don't remember now. It looks like portions of it daylight on each side, both the east and west sides. Is that right? The ramp up as well as the over the garage.
I would say the south and the east, where the garage is kind of daylight out.
So on the west side where the ramp is, that is integrated with the grade, with the arroyo?
We're trying to as much as we can. I mean, it's got to slope up to a usable garage height, kind of where you see that in kind of right in the center of it, where we have that east-west masonry block, and then you can see the storage of the garage doors there. And we are retaining, and we're trying to bring the soil up to it as much as we can.
And then from the elevations of that, it looks like you have windows also on the south and west sides. Is that right?
Yeah, they're a bit higher windows though, to allow some retaining.
Yeah, I was a little concerned, especially on the west side with the arroyo, exactly, you know, where the sill height is. And the materials around on that garage is primarily stucco. Is that right?
It's yes, it's a CMU block wall, precision block, and it's going to be smooth integral stucco on it. The eave is going to be a concrete, cast in place concrete eave. That's also the roof to really make this a more bulletproof kind of waterproofing system for the green roof.
Okay, but did it call out for a metal fascia?
No metal fascia. No, it's going to be
did I miss
the actual
that?
concrete.
Okay, all right. I think that answers my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, we do have metal fascia on the main house. I didn't want to sidestep that. More so on the rear yard where we have these larger cantilevers and overhangs. But on the detached garage, no metal fascia.
Okay, other questions?
I had one question for Nick. On the detached garage, I noticed the driveway extends a little bit beyond towards the solar panel area. Could that be the opportunity to shorten that up a little bit and get the landscape buffer the city has mentioned in that location?
Yeah, it sure is. And you can see it kind of takes a weird angle at the south end of it. I could see us pulling that back, shortening it, and maybe taking the same kind of northeast angle that the solar panels are taking, so we can get like a good 4 or 5 feet in there in order to get more boulders and some more shrubs to screen that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, it's on the north side there, so it's not going to cast too much shadow on our solar panels, and I want to screen it from the street too.
Yeah, and there's also that little pop out that you might be able to add a little larger plant in just before you reach the garage there in
I
your
see that.
hardscape.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
How are you going to, what's good, when you go through that view corridor, what do you see in terms of the solar panels? I mean, how far off the ground are they? Are they screened also on the east side?
On the east side, we are going to be screening them. And, you know, from the street, this grade is actually a good 8 feet lower than the street when you're entering the driveway. And they're standing on these kind of stilts that keep them 2 feet off of that sloping grade. And they're really following, because the grade's already sloping at kind of the 20-30 degrees that we need our solar panels to. It's kind of just floating at the same terrain slope there.
Well, I'm just interested from lot 10, what you're going to see, because that is lower, right? So
Lot
you'll
10 is
be
lower.
looking up at them.
Well, I think we are proposing to screen on the east side of there. We don't have a whole lot of room because of the no build easements. We're not allowed to touch those. But there, if you look at existing site photos and walk this site, there is a bit of, like all of Desert Palisades, there is already a lot of boulders and natural shrubs there. And each one of those no builds is 7'6". And with our 3 no builds and their 1 no build, there's going to be 30 feet before they can start to 30 feet plus their 10-foot side yard setback. But Robert, if you're concerned, I'm looking at this. I'm wondering if we can try to move these a little further west so that we can get more planting in there.
Well, the one on the north, it looks like you might be able to. The one on the south side looks like it starts to extend over the arroyo.
It is, yeah. That southern one I don't see moving further west.
Nick, my bigger concern with screening these is from the lot from the south. They're going to be looking at this, and the reflections from these panels are going to be going onto that lot. So is there, I know you don't want to get plants that are going to be tall enough to shade the panels, but on the other hand, I think we want to make sure we don't reflect onto the people to the south.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know if this is an exhibit in our package, but you know, this isn't a shared rear property line. So to the south, there's actually 88 foot 10 feet of open space before we reach our neighbor.
Okay, that takes care of it.
Yep.
And on the gym and the bedroom 3 that are cantilevered, is it a pure true cantilever, or are there some columns or posts that touch the ground?
There are no columns that touch the ground. I was very clear with our structural engineer. So underneath this thing, we are needing like W18s. And then we're hanging all of our rafters, or not rafters, our joists off of it. But we're integrating that in such a way where we've got these 18-inch wide flange beams. And then the top of those 18 inches is marrying up with the top of our floor joists there. Those floor joists are 12 inches. So we do have this 6 inches underneath to kind of deal with. We're working with our structural engineer to kind of taper those down at the very ends of our floor structure. But we've achieved this cantilever without requiring any downward post supports.
Great. Any other questions? Do we have any public comments? This is open for, if there's anybody in the waiting room or anybody in the public who would like to make a comment on this project.
And Henry and Jen?
No, we're very honored to be considered today. This is
Yeah.
an exciting project for us. This is going to be our main residence. We're already living in Palm Springs nearby. So we're excited and eager to proceed, subject to your approval, of course.
Yeah, thank you for your consideration.
Sure. Okay, committee discussion. My one comment would be, and this is just a comment, it's not ever going to be a request, but you can see it on page PL1. We can see the cantilevered gym to the right side, and then the concrete rammed earth wall. I think it looks unbalanced that that wall doesn't touch the ground. I can get the gym and the bedroom cantilevering, but I would think you would want to anchor the whole house to the ground with that wall. And that's just something for AR&D to discuss.
Yeah, a little feedback for you there, or a little history, is we originally did have that. But working with our civil engineer and with Public Works and that natural arroyo, they weren't gonna let that go.
Okay, I get it.
So we had to pull that back and cantilever, and it actually cantilevers in such a way where the tip of it then cantilevers down and gets a little more meatier as it reaches towards the gym. So we're trying to get more of that kind of grounded look that you're kind of talking about.
Yeah, okay. Any other committee comments?
Well, I have one. Yeah, I mean, I think overall the project is gorgeous. You guys, again, knocked it out of the park. The only thing I really don't like is the detached garage, especially on PL24. It just looks like a box over there, and the building is so stunning. Overall, it feels kind of disappointing to have that little gray box over there. I know what you're trying to do, but it just feels a little bit like it doesn't integrate with the rest of the project, in my opinion.
And that was going to be my comment as well. I think
stole it.
I think it's I wish there were images, renderings that showed better what that looks like from the street and from the various sides, but it seems like it's not quite thought out, and it seems a little clumsy compared to the rest of the house. And part of that may be the overhang of the roof, part of it may be the material choices, part of it may be how it integrates with the site itself, but I think some more work needs to be put into that.
And I think if you look at PL24, in these renderings, it appears that the eave does not cantilever, that it's flush with the wall, that I think that's a much better situation than just that short cantilevered overhang. I think to carry the wall straight up with the material being continuous would be a cleaner and softer look. Any other comments? John Walsh.
I just think part of the deliverable that I would draw attention to is the lot merger just gives this the luxury of extra space. And I think you've been very clever in your usage of the no build zones to stack them up and put them where they're going to really be able to achieve a buffer. I've just always been curious in that development, how does guest parking work? You just sort of pull off the road?
Yes.
Is there a designated spot, at least with some shade, or is that just sort of not part of the deal there?
Rick, did you want to touch on that?
If you'd like me to, sure. Yes, commissioners, there are no designated areas for guest parking. So the fact that they're actually putting the second garage with guest parking actually helps. Otherwise, yeah, you're right. People would actually just park on the side of the road.
Yep.
In there. One thing I would like to add, if it's okay, Mr. Jakeway,
sure,
is in the specific plan for Palisades, it actually states in there that planning director has some authority to override some of the specific plan guidelines for Palisades. One of them that came up that myself and Nick talked about was, you have these two lots and each lot has a no build easement on it. And you're going to be combining the lots. And therefore, as Nick pointed out earlier, you actually take those no build easements and you add them to one side of the property, which ends up creating this unusable, what is it, Nick, almost 30 feet,
Yeah.
right? Where it's a no build easement and it just makes a no build easement larger. And I'm not so sure that when the specific plan was designed, that was the intent. I think the intent was to make sure that the no build easement didn't go away when you merged lots. Irregardless of that, they're going by what the Palisades specific plan says. But I think when we're talking about screening or trees, or maybe even removing one of the no build easements, I think it's completely within the purview of either the planning director or maybe even ARC to, go down that path and see if it's possible for plantings, because we're not really doing structures, we're doing more renaturalization. So that's just some food for thought for you.
Rick, thank you very much for pointing that out, because I think if we could do an exception just to get some landscaping around the end of the solar panels might be a nice compromise.
Yeah, so you're not, really, the intent of the no build easement is still being met, but you're using it for natural purposes, not building or excavation.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And John, to kind of answer your question too about the guest parking, is we are trying to widen our driveways, and we add these hammerheads at the end of our driveways, not only at the detached garage, but we're doing that at the main attached garage too, to help mitigate all the parked cars on the side.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we haven't talked about was the exceeding the height limit. And just for the record, I don't have an issue with that. So that's something we need to address in our motion.
Okay, and I'm in total agreement, Robert. Do we have a motion? Well, I'll make a motion that we approve this project as submitted, and that we ask the design team to just consider some of the comments that have been made today. And if we can pursue the approval of some additional landscaping at the end of the solar panels within that no build easement. But we would specifically do approve the height limit extension.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Robert, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It'll be a great addition to Palm Springs. Okay, any committee member comments on anything? David, any staff comments for us?
No, thank you for your service this evening.
Okay, thank you all.
Good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.